New York City mayoral candidate Zohran has floated an idea that is radical to some ears, and that is 5 government-run grocery stores, one in each borough in New York City. The reaction to this is obviously socialism. Socialism. Governor Kathy Hochul dismissed it, saying, "I favor free enterprise." Supermarket moguls, of course, are coming out saying, government-run grocery stores just simply don't work. And people rightfully pointed to a failed government-run grocery store in Kansas City, Missouri, Sunfresh Market, which the government purchased, had a privateer run it, and it ultimately ended up going under. They started this in 2018. They opened it up in a food desert, thinking people need groceries in these areas. There's nothing around. These private companies won't service this area. So the government will buy a grocery store. The government handed it over to a privateer to run it, but didn't subsidize it at all. And ultimately, the thing just ended up going under because the prices were too high without the subsidies and without being able to buy in bulk like you can if you're a big, huge grocery retailer. And Sunfresh ultimately went under. Now, of course, people point at that and they say, well, see, government-run grocery stores do not work. They absolutely do not work. And Zohran Memdani, the socialist, has got this crazy, insane idea. Now, I got to tell you, I am a libertarian-esque person, but after doing the research on this, I'm not going to lie, I kind of favor the government-run grocery stores. And before you get your nuts tied in a knot, let me explain. Now, I am all about free market enterprise. I'm not saying all the grocery stores in the country should become government-run, but I'm going to explain piece by piece how government-run is not the problem. We have many examples, actually, of government-run that runs actually quite well. The issue is congressional regulation, government oversight and regulation, essentially, whether it be through Congress or state legislators or whoever it is. It's whenever the lawmakers get involved, they always muck stuff up. So go into this with an open mind, and let's try to walk through whether or not government-run grocery stores could actually work. Now, we do have an example of this pretty much right away, and that is state-run liquor stores. In 17 states in this country, we have state-operated liquor stores where the state is responsible for procuring the liquor, distribution of the liquor, and the retail sales of the liquor. Where I'm sitting right now in Idaho happens to be one of these states, 17 control states. Now, this is a very, this is a holdover from the Prohibition era. It is meant to control people and their consumption. I mean, there's no doubt that the state-run liquor stores have a really nefarious reason for why they exist. But let's not talk about why they exist. Let's talk about the fact they do exist and how well do they operate. So you've got 17 control states where they are operating and running pretty much all of the liquor. It's a little bit different depending on which state you're in, but these are the 17 states right here. Some of these states, they deal with everything, Idaho being one of them. Some states are even stricter, and they actually control even the wine and beer sales, which Idaho does not. Idaho only does heavy liquor sales, but some states actually, any and all liquor, they control and they sell. Now, you might ask, well, the prices are probably way higher, right? Because that's the thinking when you think state-run, government-run anything, you're thinking, oh, it's inefficient, it's crappy, and the prices are higher. But actually, the studies have shown in these control states that the prices are pretty much the same. Some studies have shown that the prices are slightly lower, actually, in the control states. Some of the studies show that the prices are slightly higher, but it's overall a wash, and it's pretty much exactly the same as the states that don't have control by the government. So that right there shows you the prices are the same. You're not going to get price gouged because the government's running it. So what is the real difference? Well, there are some negatives to state control. First of all, you can't buy liquor whenever you want, right? Because the state controls it. So they have certain hours that they operate, certain days. Like in Utah, I don't think you can buy liquor on Sundays. I might be wrong on that. At least at one point, you definitely couldn't. I think you still might not be able to. So they have some rules and regulations that are a bit stifling to the individual and the individual's freedom. Also, one of the downsides of state-run liquors is you don't get the selection you might find in a state like California, where you could just go to the grocery store, buy any bottle of liquor. And some grocery stores in the state of California even have impressive liquor selections. Whereas, in a state-run liquor store, you might not get all of the premium, hard-to-find liquor. However, I will say that you can find some of the really rare stuff in a place like Idaho, and they don't price gouge you on it. So if you can get your hands on a bottle of something, like a bottle of Pappy's, for example, in California, when they get their allotment of Pappy's, it's going to be outrageously expensive, whereas Idaho doesn't put the markup on it, but it's going to be hard to find. That being said, basically the prices are on par. And basically, you're going to get the liquor you want. You can drink your heart out. You just might not be able to do it on a Sunday at 1 o'clock in the morning. Go and buy yourself a bottle of liquor. Nobody screams socialism about this. Most of this is in red states. And people are not screaming socialism, socialism, socialism. The state controls the liquor. It's just been like this for a long time and people accept it. Now, another thing, privatization actually doesn't make the prices any less. In fact, in the state of Washington, they privatized their liquor in 2012. So some of these control states are trying to move to a more privatized model. Washington state said, all right, we'll take it to the voters. And in 2012, they passed a measure telling people, look, well, let's privatize. You're going to end up with lower prices and more convenience. What was the reality, however, when Washington state went private? Prices skyrocketed. They skyrocketed 15%. In fact, Idaho, the neighboring state, and Oregon, the border towns, people went running to Idaho and Oregon to buy the liquor because it was cheaper. So Idaho actually saw a massive revenue spike after Washington decided to privatize, and so did Oregon. These states actually made more money in liquor sales because Washingtonians came running. So why did the prices shoot up in Washington state? Well, because, and also the same thing has happened in Iowa. In fact, many of the other states, I'm going to use Washington as an example, but the privatization of liquor sales has happened in several states. And when it did, it always went up. Here in the United States, the prices always went up. There are some examples of the privatization of liquor stores, like in Canada, where the prices actually stayed the same or went down. But in the United States, anytime it's been privatized, the prices have gone up every single time. So you're sitting there thinking in your mind already, well, if you privatize it, you're going to get cheaper. You're going to get cheaper liquor. That has not been the case, not once, here in the United States. So what is the problem? Well, the issue is the regulators, right? The lawmakers in Washington, they just couldn't keep their hands out of the cookie jar. And what happened was, because the states that are using these state-run liquor stores make money. Okay, they are profitable. These are not breaking even or barely struggling or subsidized. I can guarantee you right now, no state is subsidizing liquor. Okay, so these are profitable businesses that are run by the states. And what do they do with the profits? They dip those profits. They put the profits into programs. They actually use it to fund programs. Some of the states use it to fund drug and addiction programs. Some states use it for education, dumping it into the schools, dumping it into city services like firefighters, police stations, whatever it might be. But the money, the profits, actually get to go back to the community. And that's what happens. Well, when these states decided to privatize their liquor, they didn't want to get rid of that money that they were gaining. So they taxed. They added extra tax onto these private liquor retailers. And these liquor retailers would be like Costco or Walmart, whoever was going to start selling liquor in these states. But the prices automatically went up because the state regulators added their share. They didn't want to lose revenue, so they added it on. And then not only that, because that actually would have kept prices about the same, but then, of course, the private retailer needs to make a profit. So the private retailer added their own increase, which actually was even higher than the state's taxation. And you ended up with skyrocketing prices for liquor and people running to the state-run socialist liquor stores in Idaho and in Oregon. So the moral of the story there is that because the state regulators added on the taxation, that really is what caused the prices to skyrocket. If it was just the private companies and they were just trying to make a profit, the prices probably would have been competitive. They would have been the same. If it was just the state adding their tax in order to get their profit that they wanted out of it, the prices would have stayed the same. You just can't have both. But what do you lose as a community, right? I mean, if you move it to privatization, what happens? Now the state doesn't make the money, and now you have underfunded schools or underfunded police departments or underfunded drug and rehab programs. So the private companies, they make the profit, but who does the profit go to? Well, it goes to Jeff Bezos because the Amazon markets are selling the alcohol. So Jeff Bezos gets to go sit on a yacht and rent out all of Venice, Italy for his wedding. But you as a community suddenly lose all of your money. So as a community member, to me, it's obvious I would rather the money go into the community, especially into drug and rehab addiction when I've got, homeless, trying to step over homeless people all over the place. Yeah, it'd be nice to actually maybe put money into the programs to help them out rather than helping Jeff Bezos get another yacht and rent out another town in a European nation. Yeah, so you lose something when you actually move to private. You lose that extra funding. So there's another example, however, of government run that works well, grocery store wise, and this would be the military commissaries. Now you might say, oh, but Kim, the military is different. Is it really though? Let's talk about these government run grocery stores that actually work. These are run by the Defense Commissary Agency. The prices, they charge at these commissaries on the military bases, they charge cost plus 5%. And the 5% that they're charging is for maintenance of the stores. So there's no sales tax on this. It's just a 5% surcharge to just keep things up, make sure that they've got new trucks running, that they've got what they need, in order to operate. Shoppers save on average at these military commissaries 22 to 25%. Overseas, it's even higher. It's like 40% overseas. But here in the United States, they're saving on average 22 to 25% on groceries. Now, you and I don't get to shop at these grocery stores. It's only for people that are affiliated with, that live on the base or affiliated with the military base. But families consistently report cheaper meat, dairy, and staples compared to even Walmart or Kroger. And it's not just groceries, it turns out, but they also have on these commissaries run by the government. They have gas stations that are chain franchised gas stations that the government owns and runs, and fast food chains. That's right. Burger King, Taco Bell. What do you got? Look at this food court this is a government food court. Does that look like? That looks nicer than most mall food courts right there. And that is a government owned and operated food court. Panda Express, they've got all of these foods. They've got all these fast foods. And guess what? Every single one of these is actually owned and operated by the government. Yes, these are franchises, but the government operates as the franchisee when it comes to the military bases. So you're eating at McDonald's, you're eating at Burger King, you're eating at Panda Express on a government base. It is run by the government. The franchisee is the government. And the profits that are made go back into, it goes to the people. That's where the profit gets. It's not like some colonel is sitting around making a ton of money off of the profits from Burger King on the military base. No, the money actually goes back to the people. So, and they work. They operate just fine. These are highly functional. Everything's great. Now, you might say, yeah, but the problem with these government-run grocery stores is that they're subsidized by the taxpayers. And this is true. They are subsidized by the taxpayers. The government, the actual products themselves and the maintenance of these commissaries are covered by the cost plus the 5%. But the part that does get subsidized by the taxpayers are the employees that are working there. And there's like a few other infrastructure things that are going on that are subsidized by the taxpayers. But let's talk about Walmart for just 2 seconds, shall we? Because Walmart subsidizes by basically hiring a bunch of employees that need to be on welfare. So when Walmart, the problem with the commissaries is that there's only 240 operating in the United States, so they're small. But hypothetically, if the commissaries were allowed to expand to serve the general civilian public, so let's just say we're like, let's just do it. They work at 240 bases across the country. We've got these commissaries. Let's just now expand it all the way across the country, like to the level of Walmart. I mean, Walmart has 4,200 stores. Commissaries only have 240. So let's just say we were to eliminate the government subsidies of the commissaries. What would happen? Well, actually, what would happen is the prices would go up, right? Because they're no longer subsidized, but they wouldn't go up that much more than what you're already paying for at Walmart or Kroger. Okay, the prices would probably be about the same, maybe slightly higher. Now, why would they be higher? Because 240 stores, if you're just talking about the 240 in existence without subsidies entirely, without taxpayer subsidies, they can't compete and negotiate to the level of 4,200 Walmarts. So Walmart can undercut them with a lot of bulk purchasing. But if commissaries were to expand and open up in every single corner of America and end up having 4,200 commissaries rather than 240 commissaries, the government would be able to negotiate the same bulk pricing that Walmart would get. But here's the kicker. The difference is these grocery stores would not run on profit. They would run the same way they do right now, which is cost plus 5%. What would happen? And if there is any surplus, let's just say the government says, well, let's go ahead and make, I don't think they should, because the whole point of a grocery store, maybe on certain goods, they could mark it up and say, let's make a profit on junk food. Let's make a profit on, mac and cheese. But when it comes to actual basics like fruit, vegetables, flour, baking supplies, milk, dairy, products like that, just no markup, cost plus 5% to ensure that we can operate. Anything else, maybe a little bit of a surplus. What could they do with those profits? They could dump those profits into the communities because it's the government. Whereas Walmart, what does Walmart do with it? Walmart, by the way, runs on subsidies. So you could say, well, but the government would need taxpayer subsidies, or maybe not. Maybe the government wouldn't need that because they're not trying to turn a profit for shareholders, right? They're instead we're just trying to operate. Walmart, on the other hand, tries to turn a profit for all of its shareholders, and it still has employees that are running on welfare, literally handing them papers for how to sign up for welfare after they get hired for a job at Walmart. So the difference is, at least with commissaries, if it was government run, if there were any subsidies, it would be transparent. We'd all be able to see it. Walmart, you don't really know. You don't know exactly how much government subsidies your taxpayers are actually funding to keep them afloat, because we're having to give welfare and stipends to their employees. At least with the commissaries, you would know. So the thing about, so if we were to expand hypothetically and turn, and I'm not saying get rid of the private grocery stores. I'm a big fan, as somebody who's libertarian-esque, I'm a big fan of, I like my options. I like freedom. I'm a freedom-loving person. The more freedom I have, the better. And part of how to have so much freedom is giving me options. That's freeing. I can choose to either shop at the government-run grocery store, which maybe doesn't have as many options, but you know what? Trader Joe's doesn't have that many options either. You go to Trader Joe's and you're getting the selection that they give you. That's how they keep their prices so low. Okay? Same thing, if I go to certain stores like Aldi, I'm not getting a massive selection. But yeah, if I go to a place, a Kroger, I'm going to get more selection, more options. And sometimes I like that because I have a certain dish I want to make that only I can get the ingredients at, a bigger store that has more options for me. I'm big on options. Let's not get rid of our options. But it's also really freeing. For example, in the instance of schooling, education for your kids, it's really freeing to have the option of public school. You might want to put your kid in private school and pay for it out of your own pocket. But it's really freeing to know you have the option of public school. It's also really freeing to know you have the option of private school if you do send your kids to public school. You always have the option to choose to spend your money differently and instead move your kids to private school because maybe something's going on with the public school system and you don't like it, or vice versa. You don't have the money to take your kid to private school. You at least have the option of public school. Maybe you choose to invest and put your kids into private school. That is your choice to pay for that. Or maybe you'd rather take all of your extra money and invest it into a new business. That is your choice. Because now you could put your kids in public school and you're like, you know what? I live in a great neighborhood. My neighbors are fantastic. Their kids are great. Public school's just fine for my kid. Fine. Now I could take my money as my choice and I get to now invest it in a business I've always wanted to start. These are freeing options. This is libertarian-esque life. This is, give me all of my possible options. Don't bog me down with the decision you've made for me. And when you say, oh, well, we're only going to have, let's say, private education now, I have no choice now but to pay for my kids' education because you forced it on me, rather than sending them to a benefit to the American people that our taxpayers go towards, that our tax dollars go towards, and that being, public school. So I'm big on the options. I'm not saying let's just get all of the grocery stores and make them all run by the government because government is better. No. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying I like the option and I actually think they could work well. And I think for a lot of basics, people might choose to go to the government-run grocery store, the commissary, the civilian commissaries. Now, the government knows how to run stuff. You might say, well, but if the government ran it, it would be a mess. That's not true. The government runs things really, really well. Firefighters, they show up, right? Police officers, Usually they show up. Depends on how much crime there is in your city and how much defunding the police ended up with, right? So don't defund, fund things. Secondly, the military runs just fine. And those military commissaries, they also run just fine. The government actually knows how to run things. It's just when the government regulators, when the regulators get involved and they start putting regulations and taxations or whatever junk they decide to stick on something, that's when things start to crumble. And a really good example of this is the United States Post Office. Now let's talk about USPS, because you might be saying, Kim, the post office is a disaster, and this is an example of government-run crap. Well, is it? Is it, though? Let's talk about what happened to USPS, because you've heard the narrative over the last 15 years, which is USPS is just, it's bankrupt, losing money. It just needs to be privatized. The whole thing is crap. Let's get rid of it. Well, actually, USPS had been running just fine all the way up until 2006. And in 2006, lawmakers, because it's always the lawmakers got together and they were saying, oh, you know what? Now that there's the internet and people are sending email, there's fewer pieces of mail going out, and we're worried about the future of USPS. At this point, the Postal Service was actually still running just fine, and they weren't in dire straits. But the lawmakers were like, but we have to think ahead. And we think we're going to see a problem because of email and all these other things. So we need to do something about USPS before it goes under. So they passed this stupid law in 2006. This was a Republican-run Congress, but this was bipartisan, and no one contested this. So it was totally done bipartisan. And in 2006, they required the United States Postal Service to prepay 75 years worth of retiree health benefits. No other government agency, no other private business has ever been forced to do this in the history of ever. And the United States Postal Service was suddenly having to come up with money to prepay 75 years worth of retiree health benefits. That means people who weren't even born yet, who might work for the government, might work for the post office. They were like, you have to fund their health benefits, people who don't even exist. And so this was saddling, and this was a poison pill, and it caused USPS each year to show that they were basically bankrupt. I mean, their budget sheet, their balance sheet after that just looked like crap. How could you possibly be profitable or even break even when you're having to pay 75 years worth of health benefits, prepaying that in advance? It's insane. So this went on for years and years, and headlines ran, USPS is insolvent, USPS is basically bankrupt, we got to get rid of USPS. And of course, who was benefiting from that narrative? Jeff Bezos. Who was benefiting from that narrative? FedEx, UPS, all of these bigger shipping companies were like, yeah, get rid of the post office and just leave it all to us. That would be great. Then we get to take that lion's share, that massive share, and put it in our privatized pockets. That's who benefited from this narrative. Now, luckily in 2022, Congress went and reversed this. So it's no longer a thing for USPS, but the damage has been done. 15 years of having to do this, 15 years of the public being told USPS is bankrupt, 15 years of having to prepay 75 years. That left USPS 15 years without being able to innovate. Had they just been left alone without the dumb government regulators, they would have been able to pivot and think about, okay, what can we do to innovate? But they were left with no money for innovation. Nothing. Zip, zilch, zero. They weren't allowed. They had plenty of ideas. The postmasters had ideas. They weren't allowed to do anything with it. They wanted to open up some civilian banking. They wanted to get into more package delivery, the way Amazon does it. They were having all these ideas and they couldn't do anything with it. So that is not a function of government piss poor running. It was government piss poor regulations that has caused USPS to struggle. Same thing with Washington State and their liquor. Right? It wasn't that the government liquor stores weren't running properly. They were. And it wasn't, I mean, are you going to say now that the private liquor store companies weren't running well? And so that's why prices skyrocketed? No, that wasn't the reason either. But it was government interference, government regulation, the dumb regulators getting involved, and saying we want to do something to make it look like we're actually doing our job, because we all agree on war, and we all agree on taking a bunch of money and becoming millionaires, and we all agree on, basically Epstein and Israel. We all agree on all these things. So we just have to, do something. And this is what we're going to do, is we're going to regulate the hell out of the American people and industries and just cause them to collapse. I mean, I think that's what they're actually thinking. I think they actually have those conversations. I don't even think it's like, oh, they just weren't thinking of the consequences. They knew the consequences. They went into this on purpose. They were helping their lobbies, the buddies. But nonetheless, that being said, USPS still offers a service to the American people that is widely popular. And the reason is because the United States Postal Service services every single address in the country. It doesn't matter if you live in the middle of nowhere. USPS will deliver to you. You cannot say that about UPS, nor can you say that about FedEx. They service where it's convenient, where they have infrastructure. USPS delivers everywhere. That has remained invaluable to every single American in the country. And in fact, the cost of USPS is still less than UPS and FedEx for smaller items such as envelopes and small lightweight packages. For example, a 1-pound package that is shipped by USPS would be about $7.35. UPS ground is about $7.50. FedEx ground is about $8.25. A 5-pound package, $9.50 with the U.S. Post Office. UPS, it's $9.75. And FedEx ground, it's a whopping $11. So you can see that USPS still offers a valuable service to Americans at a lower cost than its competitors, UPS and FedEx. So when it comes to heavier packages, though, FedEx and UPS start to win out on that. When it comes to heavier packages or high speed, if you need things to arrive quickly. But look, I'm happy with the post office. I don't know about you, but I don't really have any problems. My packages arrive. They might arrive slower, but they also cost me less. So you get what you pay for, and I'm not complaining. Sometimes I don't want to pay a fortune to ship a package, and I don't mind if it takes 7 days to get there. I don't need it to be there in 2 days. That's totally fine. So the real I think, takeaway from this, when Zohran Mamdani says, look, I want to open up these state-run grocery stores, and everybody starts freaking out saying socialism, this isn't going to work. The reality is it absolutely can work. Just let the regulators just need to get out of the way. I mean, now on a smaller scale, the way that Mamdani's talking, it's going to be harder for it to work without the government stepping in and actually doing subsidies for the New Yorkers. So if New York City is going to subsidize and ensure that the prices stay low because they cannot compete with the big grocers, they're not able to negotiate massive bulk pricing. But if they can subsidize, then they could actually get these groceries for less. And now you might have New Yorkers screaming about that, saying, yeah, but why do I have to pay for the subsidies for certain people to have a grocery store? Well, you can go grocery shopping there too. No one's keeping you out of that neighborhood and shopping at that grocery store. You just might not want to, because they're probably going to be put into places where there's food deserts, and usually those are neighborhoods that are not that great. And you might run into some other problems. People in the neighborhood might loot the place a lot. I mean, there's food deserts in certain parts of this country for a reason, because the people sometimes can't behave themselves in those areas. I mean, we're seeing this all the time right now across the country with drugstores being basically run out of areas because people are coming in and looting, and it's no longer profitable for the Walgreens or the CVS to stick around. So if those things happen, it could, of course, fail. But the concept itself as a government-run grocery store, what I was trying to point out to you here is that in and of itself is not a failure. There are things that can make it fail. But the government running a grocery store is not the failure in and of itself. Now, they could get a private company to come in and run it. That's what happened in Kansas City with Sunfresh. But the private company, again, if they don't have the subsidies from the government, they're not going to be able to compete with the lower prices of the big Walmarts of the world. But if the government were to expand the idea and to make commissaries, civilian commissaries all across the country, then it would be something that is totally and completely viable. It's the same with drug pricing, prescription drug pricing. If you can negotiate it in bulk, you're going to get it for a lot cheaper. So if the government is able to negotiate on behalf of all Americans the price of, whatever it is, EpiPens or diabetes medication or heart disease medication, whatever it is, then obviously being a massive buyer like that, you're going to be able to get things for less. That is just the basic laws of a business, basic laws of supply and demand, business, and negotiating wholesale. So the concept can work. I think it's a good idea if everybody in the government were to get on board with this and offer real government services to the American people, grocery stores, pharmacies, right, with lower drug prices, that would be great too. Things like that. These things can work. And if you're looking at the private sector and pointing at Walmart saying, yeah, but I can buy things cheaper at Walmart, sure you can. But Walmart is subsidizing using our taxpayer dollars. We're just not seeing the actual result of that because they don't have to report how many of their employees are on welfare and how much welfare each of their employees are receiving. So, yes, I'm a libertarian-esque person, but now I'm in favor of government-run grocery stores. I don't see the problem with it. What I'm not in favor of is regulators. We got to get rid of the regulation, which is also a free market sort. Allow the government to operate in the free market as well, and allow them to instead of forcing the government to prioritize profits, which they wouldn't do, just like the liquor stores don't prioritize the profits, the grocery store wouldn't prioritize the profit. And if they did prioritize the profit, at least the money goes back to the people rather than it being, going to, again, Jeff Bezos on his private yacht or renting out all of Venice, Italy. So I'm a little bit more in favor of this now. I think that the issue is regulation. That is the fundamental issue. So get rid of the regulation. But hey, if Zohran Memdani wants to try it out, I say, why not? You got Andrew Cuomo out there being like, well, you actually have, who is it? Bill Ackman out there claiming, well, this is going to be a disaster. Memdani's going to be a disaster. And we need Cuomo. He says, we need Cuomo and we need Eric Adams. As if, the two leaders of that state and city haven't already ran the place into the ground. So yeah, let's just keep doing more of the same and see if that works. Or maybe, just maybe try something a little bit different and don't be so afraid of it. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. It is free for you to watch. Again, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, KimIversonShow.com. See you there.